When it comes to coding agent, here's something that nobody talks about. They can definitely make you faster in code production, but they can also make you worse. And the difference comes down to how you use them. After using coding agents for every day for the last year or so, I want to share some of my own learnings and those by the community. The most important takeaway is going to be do not outsource your thinking. Now, the hype around coding agents like Claude Code is real. So Anthropic says that 90% of Claude Code is written by Claude Code itself. And you could argue that the productivity gains are not fake. You can literally do weeks of work in days and hours of work in minutes now. But here's the other side. I have personally seen code bases written by AI that looks like they were worked on by 10 independent developers who were not talking to each other. And the issues that we normally see is there are duplicate logic, inconsistent naming, no architecture whatsoever. And this happens if you let AI run unsupervised. Now, this video is going to be all about how do we get the good without the bad stuff from AI. I will be referring to a number of different blog posts, but here is the core argument. You cannot outsource your thinking. Everything else flows from this. Now, what exactly does this mean? In simple words, bad prompts, where the model has to make a lot of assumption of what exactly you want, is outsourcing your thinking to the model. And better prompts are about learning to learn. So when you are interacting with the system, you should try to build this new skill where you are learning to learn, not just getting answers from the coding agent. And in the rest of the video, we're going to be focusing on specific lessons that I have come across. So the very first one is context rot is real. Now, context rot happens when you have a lot of irrelevant information in your context and it stops helping and starts hurting. So as a result of this, the model starts forgetting a long list of things. It will start ignoring half of your questions. And the model is not really able to figure out which part to pay attention to and which not to. So you need to be very intentional with this. If you start seeing the model is forgetting, just restart the session again or use the catch-up command in Claude Code. This is going to help the agent to refocus their attention. Now, lesson 2, plan first and then code later. So here's the workflow that actually works in practice. When you start a new session, brainstorm with your agent, let it ask questions, compile that into a specs document. And after that, make sure you generate a step-by-step plan, which breaks the task into smaller tasks. Now, then and only then start coding. Now, this definitely is going to feel slow, but it's actually faster. Because as a user and the coding agent, as a developer, are going to be exactly on the same footing. And you want to make sure you reduce the ambiguity in requirements that the agent is supposed to build. Now, why does this work? Without a plan, you simply get slop. You and the agent cannot think through something that does not exist. And with a plan, you can carry the context forward. And if you need to restart, just use the clear command. But at least you will have the plan that survives and the agent is going to be able to restart from that. The next lesson is about incremental development. Small chunks beat big prompts. Normally, the big mistake is that you ask the coding agent to build you a whole feature. It usually tries it and will result in a mess. You want to follow test-driven development. Ask for step number 1, code it, test it, and then move on to step number 2. Now, the good thing is that these LLMs and coding agents are great at contained tasks. So you need to work with that. Now, this one might be a bit controversial, but think of yourself as a team lead or technical manager, even if you don't know programming. In order to get the most out of these coding agents, you need to get better at development yourself. I'm not talking about the syntax, but best programming practices. Here's a quote from Simon Wilson. Think of an LLM pair programmer as an overconfident and prone to mistakes. It writes bug with complete conviction. So you need to treat every snippet like it came from a junior developer. You need to read it, run it, test it. And that's one of the way you can avoid slop. That also means you will need to put a lot of effort. So review every plan before execution. Interrupt your coding agent when it's drifting. never merge a code that you can't explain. And I would recommend to hold yourself responsible and accountable for every piece of line that is written by the AI agent that you're using. Lesson 5, you need to get better at test-driven development. Because without those, your agents are completely blind. They don't know what they're writing. Because without tests, your coding agent assumes everything is working fine. And I really like this quote. Nobody gets promoted for writing unit tests, but unit tests never don't save your life. Lesson 6, ground your model and make good use of Claude.md or agent.md. Now, you want to make sure you are very intentional about what is in your Claude.md or agent.md, because this is going to be the onboarding document for your AI agent. It can include things like project style, what are the different gotchas, and how you want it to think about things. So when you're starting a new project or you're working in an existing code base, just run in /init. This will auto-generate one for you. Now, the way you want to use it is that if you run into any issues, you want to document those. And this is extremely helpful, especially if you're working on a multi-session project, where for every session, your agent is going to look at your Claude.md or agent.md and get a really good sense of the current state of your project. So keep in mind, this is not just for setup. You also want to document the issues and resolutions for those specific bugs. So it's going to be a living document that is going to be updated while you're working on your project. Lesson 7, subagents are not always the solution. So you need to know when not to use agents. For example, do not use them for explorative work. If something is not working, you can't just ask them, figure out why it's slow, because there is no clear done criteria or state. So it's potentially a bad fit for a subagent. Also, going back to the main theme, do not outsource your thinking. Architectural decisions need judgment, not just iterations. So it's probably a bad fit for it. And if there is anything security critical, that definitely needs human eyes, because passing tests is not equal to secure code. Think about it this way. At least right now, AI is really good at implementation. It's not good at designing yet. Now, that could change pretty quickly. We never know. Now, be careful with the way you use multi-agent systems. So for example, if you have 10 different subagents, that also means you have 10 different failure sources. So in theory, subagents can be good for separation of concerns, but in practice, it can become extremely cumbersome, because when it breaks, you're debugging a combinatorial explosion. Lesson 9, Git is your safety net. Now, most developers are aware of this, but they don't use it often enough. So the one thing that you want to do a lot, if you're using a coding agent, you need to commit often. Regularly commit your work, because if things go sideways, you can easily roll back to a previous checkpoint and have a working version. Small commits also help you in debugging, because bigger commits are going to be a nightmare for debugging purposes. But here's the thing, never commit what you cannot explain. Now, most of us are using a single agentic coding system like Claude Code, maybe Gemini, and everybody has their favorite. But you want to get used to using multiple different models for your development flow, because each one of these models have different strengths and weaknesses. So have Claude write the code, ask Gemini to review it, or maybe if you like Codex, that is your agent to review your PR. Now, why this works? It's the same reason you don't review your own PR. Second model catches blind spots that were ignored by the first model. And I would even argue that you want to look for a different model provider when you are reviewing a PR. So for example, if you did development with Anthropic model, then use OpenAI or Gemini model for reviewing the PR. So what does this all add up to? If you have really solid fundamentals, the AI will actually multiply your output. But if you don't, it multiplies confusion. You need to be extremely intentional when it comes to AI development. And it's really this virtuous cycle that we have seen with every other system that we have used in the past. So better fundamentals gives you better AI results. which results in more learning and even better fundamentals. So make sure not only to use these AI agents as tools for development, but also tools for learning. And in the process, you're going to get really better at how to prompt the system to get better outcomes. Now, here are the key takeaways. Don't outsource thinking, learn to learn. You want to plan first. This is the way you should be designing. Do not let the AI write a single line of code without planning first. And treat yourself as a senior engineer or a technical manager. You need to stay in the loop. And for any complex system, tests and Git are your safety nets. Use them often. And make sure you provide enough context to your model by grounding them with the context in Claude.md or agent.md. And the final point, secret isn't in the prompts, it's actually in the process. So plan, think, collaborate, teach context, and learn in the process. Here are some of the resources that I used during the preparation of this presentation. Do let me know your own workflows and your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.